Good morning, good morning, good morning. Guess I'm on a little bit of a delay this morning. Let's see. Oh, I don't know if how you guys are doing, but that the whole daylight savings thing. I think it's time we let it go. The whole purpose of daylight savings was to give farmers more reasonable time in the morning, basically. That was it. It was to help out farmers so that they could be part of society, so they could take advantage of having the sunlight earlier. That was it. And don't really need it so much. Farmers don't need they don't need that extra time to be a part of society anymore. They really don't. So let's see. Let's see. I don't know what's going on here. Hold on. Hold on. Anyway, so I missed church yesterday because of daylight savings. Because we have an alarm clock in the bedroom that is not hooked up to anything, and so it doesn't flip over automatically, so it's just on the regular time. So so that was fun. Let's see. There we go. Okay, now we're up and running. So anyway, it's been a fun week. Last week was a lot of fun doing this morning show. It almost felt like I had a regular job, and so I thought, wow, why not just keep going? Let's just keep doing this, and try to, I don't know, put a little normalcy in my day. So, you posted a video without long hair. How? Yeah, it's called the good question. It's called a time delay. No, it was a repost video. I've been making videos for a long time. I've been into social media for a really long time, and most of what I was doing was just entertaining, very few people. And as now I've gotten a little bit more of a following, there's a lot of stuff that I posted back in 2000, whatever, that was what didn't get the attention that it deserved, because back then I only had 40 followers, and most of them were my family and a few friends. So no one saw anything, so no one paid attention or cared back then. And so now every once in a while I'll repost those videos. Reruns. There was a rerun. It's my generation understands reruns, and that's what I was doing. I was posting reruns, and it's amazing to me that I'll post a video like the apology video, And people have asked about the apology video. Allow me to explain the apology video. That was from like 2015, where I've got the very small beard, shorter hair. Um, I had posted something and some lady got upset about it. I don't even, to be honest with you, I don't remember what the whole thing was about. I remember there was a lady who got mad at me for no good reason. I mean, it wasn't like she was actually offended by anything. She was offended for somebody else who might get offended. It was one of those, it's the typical people that get offended are usually offended for somebody else. They're not really offended for themselves. They're worried about somebody else getting offended by what you did. So, one of those deals. And so I decided I would make an apology video. And so that was the inspiration. Again, I don't remember the actual incident that it was involved, but that's it. That's what happened. So now you know. So I made the video, and I thought it was so ridiculous that I needed to share it with the world. And so every once in a while, I do so. The dad's instructional videos. Yes, those were from a very long time ago. Like I said, I made those back. It was a series that we were working on with the kids because we homeschooled our children. And so as part of their education, they all wanted to get into making videos and doing video editing and all that kind of stuff. And so we came up with these ideas, and we filmed them, and the kids filmed them, and the kids edited them together and posted them back when they were very young. And so it was just sort of a silly family project that we did as a part of their education. And they did. My daughter, who did most of the editing, she went on and she edits. She's really into anime videos. So, I posted a video with her. Her name is Tiana. And she's out there on YouTube and Twitter. She's pretty active on Twitter. But she does a lot of editing and has a lot of fun with it. So that's it's fun. That's how we had an issue with our local school district, with our local school, with our children who were being one in particular, my son. I won't get into the whole story, but we were having issues. We had one son that was getting singled out by the school because they thought he was cheating at math because he could do math in his head. Because Teresa, my lovely, beautiful, and amazing wife, started doing these games with the children when they were younger. They were math games. So she would have them count like who can find the most yellow cars, while we're driving. And so their kids are watching, looking for cars and counting cars. And then, she was teaching them basic, she would challenge them. What's 2 plus 2? What's 4 if it's divided 3 times? What did he do with the remainder? She taught the kids how to do math in their head. It was a big game that she would play with the kids all the time. And so that was how we challenged the children when they were growing up, was played these games with math. And they would get rewards if they could come up with the answer quickly. And so all of our children were good at math when they were young. They still are. And because of that, my son, when he was in school in junior high, he could do long division and multiplication and all these things very easily in his head. He just could, because he'd been doing it his whole life. And then you understand algebra is just you remove one of the numbers. How do you figure out what that number is? So he was really good at math. In his head, he could just look at the problem and give you an answer. And so the teacher was upset that he was not showing his work. So she did it. So she handed out the tests, and he was acing all the tests. And she was mad that he was acing all the tests without showing any work. So she gave him a test where it was just, he had nobody around. It was just him and her. And she gave him the test and he passed it 100%, just solved all the problems. So she's convinced that this is not humanly possible and that he's cheating somehow. And so we had a whole thing about with the school about him being a cheater. And the teacher even admitted, well, it's really a shame that I had to bring him up because he's such a helpful student. He actually helps all the other kids in the class. So it really is disturbing to me that he's cheating. And we're sitting in this room, me and Tress were sitting in this room with like 12 people from the school district and the state and all this stuff, this important issue of this boy cheating. And we're like, are you guys listening to yourselves talk right now? Did you seriously did you just say that? You think he's he's good. She would hand out homework and these homework sheets, and he would just fill them in before he even left class. He would turn in the homework for the next day before he left class. That's how good he was. That's how good he is at math. And she thought, oh, he's cheating. And this is back before, Chat GPT and all this other stuff. So it's not like he had, hey, Google, give me the answer. I mean, it wasn't any of that deal going on. And so we ended up just taking the kids out of school and homeschooling them ourselves. And so that was part of the whole thing. And they've all done very well. But I do want to thank everybody for joining me this morning. And just love hanging out with you guys. I really do. I'm working on some great things. I'm writing a book. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I am writing a book. And part of writing the book is throwing out some ideas here and there. Right here, this is my you're part of my work group. That's what this is. It's like a work group at work. You all get together, and that's what this is. Let's see. Great things to be accomplished. As they are accomplished, you will be one of the personalities in the back of my mind. That messages means more than you will realize. Yeah. Hey, thank you. ETA is now. That's an interesting name. ETA. But yeah, so that's how we've in fact, I remember this. My wife, they were kind of grilling us about homeschooling our kids, and they're like, well, do you understand the great responsibility to take on such a task, and that if you do so, that you would be completely responsible for their education? And my wife's like, look, we're responsible for their education regardless. I mean, you get to have them for a few months through a year. One at a time. One teacher will have an influence for maybe not even a full year with our kids. We're here all the time. We've already taken on that responsibility, so it's not like you're throwing anything at us. And then one teacher was like, well, what's your philosophy for education? Like we don't have one. I studied philosophy. I think I got a grasp of the philosophy of education here. And Tressa, once again, she stood up. She was like, look, we've always educated. She talked about the math games that she'd play with the kids, and that's why Joshua was so good at math, and all the kids were good at math. And Tressa said, look, we think that by making education fun and interesting and challenge them to want to learn, we don't see ourselves as necessarily here to teach them everything. We're here to teach them how to learn. And once they have a passion for learning, they're going to just find the answers themselves anyway, especially in this day and age, with it's so much education, so much information is available all the time in every form, in any form that you can. This is a great time to be alive if you really want to learn. this is a great time to just it's all right there. And this was years ago before it even got even better. I mean, it was great then. It was fantastic even then, and now it's even better. Of course, there's a lot of more misinformation. So that's one thing is we taught the kids critical thinking skills, which they don't really teach that anymore. They don't teach kids how to think. They don't teach kids logic and all of this stuff. And so anyway, so Tress is saying we're going to make it fun. We make learning part of a day of the process, and that it's not really about fulfilling assignments. It's about learning the information you need and getting better, and then knowing what to do with what you know, how to practically put it in. That's why the videos, when we have the kids make the videos and do the editing, it gave them something to work on, and it allowed them to expand their skill set. And then they just started doing stuff on their own. Then they were just making videos on their own and doing editing and doing stuff for their friends and just having fun. But I'll never forget this one. This one, I think she was an administrator with the school district. She said, well, if you teach kids that way, then anybody could learn. And it was one of those of many moments where both myself and Trust looked at each other like, did we just hear that? Did she just admit that they purposely make education boring? Because that's what she just did. Was she told us that the education's supposed to be boring and not fun and interesting, because if you make it fun and interesting, then the kids will enjoy themselves and learn something. Like what just it was like an out of body experience. I mean, I wish I could have recorded it. I wish I could have recorded that entire meeting, because in that one day, we all of our fears about the educational system were vividly and outrightly displayed. And it was an eye-opening experience, because up to that point in time, it was some more of a conspiracy theory in my head. It's like, whatever, I don't know. But that day when we sat there and we told them what we wanted to do with our children and how we wanted to have them educated, and then they were mad at us for wanting to do so. It was disheartening, very disheartening. So anyway, we pulled the kids out. We educated them, and they've all done very well. So that's what's going on with my day. So I got an update on the movie Jeebus. I think they're getting closer to a distribution deal with the movie. So it will be coming out. Not sure on dates. Not sure on dates, but I do think it will be before too long. Again, if you didn't hear, I'm in a movie playing the part of God. At least my character Leonard Quasi is playing God in this movie. And what it is it's sort of it's a modern telling of the story of Jesus, but Jesus comes back as a Florida beach bum. So it's about the second coming. It's not in any way, shape, or form biblical. In that if you're going to go in and go, that's not the way it's supposed to happen. It is not the way. It is not. It's not intended to be a doctrinal dogma thing. It's not intended to be anything other than a silly mocking of American culture. It's exactly what it is. We're not making fun of you. We're not trying to change your religion. We're not trying to preach to you. The movie is not about anything other than American culture has gotten so ridiculous, and we've made religion a horrible, terrible thing in a lot of cases, and so it's really mocking, uh, not God. The goal is the purpose of the movie is not to mock God. The purpose is to mock people and the way they worship God. I get, is that a good explanation? Okay, that's the best way I can explain this movie. There are trailers for it. It's called Jeebus, 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 and it's kind of a Monty Python esque thing. Again, we're not here. We're not mocking religion because I'm a religious person. I believe in God, and so I have my reservations about doing this movie, and since I made the movie, I still have had reservations because there are some things in it that the language that I'm not very happy with, and but I had to really consider what is it that I had to come to grips with. Not everything is perfect, and I'm not. It's not. Sometimes you do things that aren't. You're not necessarily 100% behind, but you are behind it. But yeah, I guess the message is what I found important, and my part I felt is not is done out of respect. Um. Anyway, it's going to be interesting how it comes. I probably I posted a couple things about the movie not too long ago, or little trailers that they had, little teaser trailers I'd posted, and I lost followers, and I had people get mad at me for it. So just so you know, it's not perfect. It's not for everybody, but it's out there. I did not write it. The only thing I wrote was my part. See, the way it came about that I got in this movie was I was down in Florida doing shows with my friend Donnie Stopa. Very funny comedian. Met him a few years ago. I've known him for a while. Very funny fellow. Anyway, he'd set up some shows in Florida, and he was also filming a movie about cancel culture and its effect on comedy. And so he wanted me to come down to Florida, hang out with him, film some stuff for his documentary, and do some shows. And so that's what we did. I went down there. I was filming the parts of the documentary and just hanging out. We were doing shows together. And he had set up a show at a theater. There was a little kind of a black box theater, a small theater, and it was really cool. It was a really nice theater. And he was going out trying to. He'd sold a fair amount of tickets, but not. We still had room for more people, shall we say? So he just went and hit the pavement and started passing out flyers and stuff around town. He came up to a kava bar, and that he was familiar with. He'd been to this kava bar many times. He's really into kava, so he was there handing out stuff to everybody at the kava bar, and a group that was there saw the flyer and said, "Hey, wait a second, you know this guy? You know Rodney Norman?" And he's like, "Yeah, he's a friend of mine. In fact, he's here doing a show tonight over at the theater." And they were all like excited, and because it was the group from this movie, Jeebus. This is it. They had their main office was right next. It was part of this Kava complex, I guess is the best way to explain it. So they had their offices for their production and everything was right there at this Kava bar place. So a big group of them came. It was a big part of the audience. So they came to the show, and of course we did the show. It was very entertaining. I'm very talented. Audiences love and adore me. Blah blah blah. So after the show, they came up and started talking to me, and it was like it was like a group that was trying to get you to join their cult, is kind of what it felt like. Because they came up like, oh, I love you. And they're all, this big group of them all kind of hanging around me and, tell me how awesome I am. I'm a great show, blah, blah. Yeah, you never get tired of it. It's always a little weird, but you never get tired of it. I'll be honest with you. So, and he begins to tell me about this movie. He says, hey, we're making this movie. Now, look, I get offered all kinds of things all the time. People are offering to have me do all kinds of weird stuff. And most of it is just sort of fanciful and empty promises. So you learn over the years not to get excited about anything. I mean, I've had all kinds of deals and opportunities dangled in front of me, and most of it just never pans out. It's usually just empty promises. So you learn just not to get you just don't get your hopes up. You just don't get, if it happens, it happens. You want the opportunities. You're certainly into this because I want to have the opportunities, but I'm not going to, derail my entire life on empty promises and hopeful dreams. That's it. So they're sitting there telling me, yeah, we got this movie and we'd like you to play this part. So I'm thinking, okay, sure, yeah, send me a script. My people call your people, that sort of thing. The guy, Coley, who wrote and produced and stars in the whole thing. In fact, he plays like 5 different characters in this thing. So he's pretty animated. He says, look, he goes, we're not, we promise you we are making the movie. We're currently filming it right now. We took time off from filming the movie to come here to meet you because we want you in this movie. So we agreed the next day to meet for lunch. And we met for lunch. We talked about the movie. Shared some of my concerns about the script, and it was a good meeting. And I felt good about what his intent was and what the ultimate idea behind the movie and the ultimate mission purpose of the movie was. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, I can't stick around Florida. I'm only here for a couple days. And he's like, no problem. All of your parts are green screen because you just show up in bushes and stuff, because it's not really clear that he's really Jesus so much as he thinks he's Jesus. So he's a little nuts. So just say kind of that's part of the story. So God is showing up to him in bushes and all kinds of strange places. So agreed to do it. And we filmed that weekend for like 4 or 5 hours. And I had certain things they wanted me to say specifically for their script. And then they just kind of let me go. Then they just let me just say whatever I wanted. And so that's what I did. So I just a lot of it's ad lib. Almost all of my dialogue is ad lib. In fact, there was no script. They turned the excuse me. So they turned the cameras on and just pardon me. Well, getting old is fun. But so they just turned the cameras on and just I ad-libbed. It was mostly all just improv, and so I don't even know what they're using out of it. They sent me an advanced copy of it, and I haven't taken the time to watch it yet, but I will be doing that today, and I'll give you a report. But No, no, the cough. Let me explain this cough. when I was when I was in the Marine Corps, we went to I was in my first duty station was at Camp Schwab in Okinawa, Japan, with 4th Marines. And we did some military exercises in Thailand. And in order to go to Thailand, we had to get a whole bunch of shots. I mean, we started getting shots like 6 months before we went. I mean, it was insane. And well, months before we went. So I had to get a whole bunch of shots in boot camp, and then I had to get shots before I went to Japan. And then once I got to Japan, I had to get even more shots before I could go to Thailand. Well, after, I don't know, I have to pull up my medical record, but after all of the shots that I got so that I could go to Thailand, I developed a cough. And I kept going back to medical. I'm like, look, I got this cough. And they ran tests and everything. And their thing was, well, we can give you some medicine for it, but you have to take basically cough syrup for the rest of your life. And I'm like, what? It's just, are you kidding me? And they just said, well, you just got a cough. There's nothing really, it's not really causing you problems. So, and then when I got out of the Marine Corps, I went and had it looked at because it flares up from time to time, but it's not constant. It's not a continuous thing. It's better when I'm in Connecticut than it is when I'm in Utah because the dry air really gets to me from sometimes. So, but that's it. I just I get a little dry and I have a cough. But no, I do not dab. I do not participate in the marijuanas. As a lot of people want me to be a spokesman for the marijuanas. They want me to do. I've been invited to be a spokesman for a company that makes psilocybin stuff. Hope you didn't drink the water. I was at Camp Lejeune, but it was after the lead issue was resolved. I didn't, but I didn't drink the water on because it was still fresh in people's minds when I got to North Carolina. I think they corrected the issue, I think in 89, and I was there in 92. So I was there after the whole issue had happened. But when I was there, most of the NCOs had been through the whole thing. Okay. You've probably seen all of the things. Hey, if you served in North Carolina from 1946 to 1987, you might be part of our class action lawsuit. I don't qualify for that. I was not involved in that. And I never really drank the water on base because, like I said, people I knew had been there through it. And even though they were told that it was fixed, nobody believed them because when you deal with the government, this might come as a shock to you. And I don't want to start any conspiracy theories, even though most of them are true. You know what? Sometimes the government lies to you. I know this is coming as a shock to you, but the government often will do terrible things and just lie to you. It happens. Even though it might be detrimental to your health or personal well-being, the government still lies to you. I know, and So there was this distrust by many in the Marine Corps. So we were told just to never drink the water on base. So I never did. The only thing I ever did, I would relieve myself. I didn't even wash my hands with the water on base. I would carry cleaning wipes and stuff on my own. I really didn't. I just didn't have anything to do with the water on base. So no, that wasn't me. Why does the government always lie to you? Well, no, the reason the government will lie to you, and it's because they are people who are not held accountable for lying to you. And so they might have something that they're involved in that they're aware is a problem, but instead of admitting the problem, they'll lie about the problem, and then of course so that they look good. So it's not necessarily the government, it's the people in the government who are not held accountable for almost anything. And so they will lie about stuff because they made mistakes, but to cover up their mistakes, they'll lie to you about the mistake. So like the thing with in North Carolina at the Camp Lejeune was that they basically used the wrong kind of plumbing for the water system because this was built in haste back in during wartime. And instead of correcting the issue when they realized it was a problem, they just pretended it wasn't a problem because they didn't want to spend the money to fix the problem. So they just lied to everybody for many, many years. And then all these health issues started coming up. And then when it started costing them more money, because they were the ones responsible for taking care of the health of everybody, that's when it became an issue, is when the medical expenses were greater than fixing the problem, and that's when they fixed the problem. So that's what happens. I don't know. I'm not going to say that the government specifically is out to kill everybody. I think it's just incompetence by people in the government who are not held accountable for their actions, who pass on the problem or deflect the issues, and we get stuck with the results. And that's what's happened. That's the deal. And it's not just the government, it's everywhere. Anywhere you've ever worked, people will make mistakes, and instead of just fessing up to the mistake, they'll lie about it and pass the mistake on to somebody else. And that's basically what happened in North Carolina. So I don't think they were like, I have a wonderful idea. Why don't we poison all the water and kill everyone who works for us? Oh, that's a brilliant idea. Oh. I don't think it's malicious intent. I think it's just malicious stupidity. That's most of the problems that we have are not because there's a conspiracy behind it. It's just complete and just total incompetence and people unwilling to actually step up and admit that they made a mistake and correct it. So, and then others that also part of the problem is that you have people who are accountable only for a few years, and instead of fixing the issue, they just pass the issue on to the next person and hope somebody eventually will figure it out. And then that's the nature of issues with the government, is that it takes a long time to get anything fixed. So yeah, I'm not a big fan. Somebody just said, was it Gwen? The VA almost killed me 3 times with their care. Yeah, that's where this is where we always debate about healthcare in the United States, and that we don't have a healthcare system like everybody else. And here's the weird the thing about it is trying to find this balance, because on one side you have it should be affordable for everyone, which I agree. It would be nice to have a system that is affordable, because we have a problem where people will get very sick, often no fault of their own. I mean, they are healthy otherwise, and then something happens, either an accident or they get a disease, and then they have to get into the medical system, and if they don't have insurance, it can drive the cost could go crazy. Or you can still have insurance and the insurance doesn't cover everything, and basically people's lives are completely destroyed, not just theirs but their family, because of the financial burden of caring for the person. I hate to see that, and I feel terrible that that's happened. So it's like, so then you get into this idea, well, maybe if we had it all paid for by the government, that everything will be perfect and everything will be great. Well, here's the problem. Okay, is that you want people to have health care, and we have the resources, we have the medical care, we have the ability to do it. But on the other side, you also have this concern that if you give the government control over your health care, you're throwing your health care into a system where the people making the decisions are not held accountable for their decisions. And then amazing, this again, I hate bad news coming. Whenever you give people control and make it political, people will do political things. And so you give that system over to the government without, who doesn't have, nobody, you can't redress, you could fight them, but you don't have the resources that they have. So now you give all that control to the government. So now the government is making decisions about you and your life. And so now you're surrendering this freedom to have the medical care. But by having them take care of your medical care, what happens is that you create a system that doesn't help anybody. So it's this ongoing fight. And people often bring up the VA medical system as like, we already have socialized medicine. Yeah, and it's horrible. It's terrible. It takes you months and months and years to get the proper treatment. They often don't really even address the issue because they're so overwhelmed in their system of taking care of people that it falls apart. So it's a tricky thing. It's like, okay, well, part of you're a humanitarian side. You hate to see people suffer and you want them to get medical care. Of course you do. But then you have the other side, is that when you have a system that is got a lot of money and a lot of power, that attracts people who like money and power. And people who are attracted by money and power aren't necessarily interested in doing the correct thing. They're only interested in doing what's best for them. And so they will make decisions that affect other people, and the decisions are only being made because it makes them look good, or they get power and money for doing it. So you see, plus when you give your medical care over to the government, now you're opening up all kinds of things, and you're seeing this in various countries who have socialized medicine, that they make decisions about your health care that you're not involved in, based because of costs or whatever. So it's a tricky system. So it's like, how do you create a system that, one, is fair, so that people aren't completely destitute when they have big medical cares, and then at the same time still protecting your freedom and creating a system that is still efficient and still works. It's a tricky balance. It's a very tricky balance. And part of this, I think, is the fact that you can't, if you have but you can't. The problem is Tom says, to remove the money. See, here's the problem: is that if there's you still have to have a system that inspires innovation. And the only way you can inspire innovation is you have research and development. And the reason you have research and development is to create something that creates a profit. So it's being able to develop a system that has the elements of one, still has a free market base to it. Because we had our son, I'll tell you this story. Our son broke his arm back when he was about 6 years old. He was playing on some playground equipment and he fell off, landed on his arm. Didn't look like it was broke, but he was hurt. You know, I mean, there weren't any bones sticking out or anything, but he was obviously hurt. And so we just kind of watched it and we're checking it out. As the day went on, it wasn't any better. In fact, it was hurting more. And so we said, okay, he's got a problem. So we didn't have insurance at the time. And so we took him into the emergency room and they would tell him what happened. So they went and they look at it, they do the x-rays, and it turns out he had a couple of hairline fractures in his arm. So they put a cast on him and all of that, the emergency room. And well, they were like, well, how are you going to pay for this? And we're like, well, we'll just pay for cash. And they're like, what? Like, well, we'll just pay for it. Like, well, what's your insurance? And so we don't have insurance. And they were like, oh, okay. Now, when they sat down, they were going through the bill for us. It would have been nearly $10,000, I think, after all the expenses of fixing his arm. Or maybe was it? No, it was in the thousands. It wasn't quite 10,000, but it was 4,000 or 5,000, if I remember correctly. But it was a significant amount of money. But as we're sitting there talking to them, they say, well, we don't really need this fee because that was for billing. And so they start knocking off all these different expenses. And when it came down to it, we ended up paying them, I think it was a total of about like $800 is all we got charged. I mean, that was it. We paid $800 to have my son's arm x-rayed, taken care of, and they put a cast on it. Total, and this is through an emergency room. So those costs are even, bigger. So we do that. And then we had follow-up visits, and they never charged us for the follow-up visits. The doctor was, because we went in, he was just basically seen by a nurse, and she just asked questions, took his pulse and everything. He said, yeah, everything's going good. No, nothing. And then we went to therapy. When he got to remove the cast, they charged us like $100, I think it was. It's basically a doctor's visit, all it was. So they take the cast off, and then he goes to physical therapy. And physical therapy was like, I think $40 a session, and he had to do 4 sessions to just make sure he had mobility and everything. And it was because we paid cash that it was so cheap. If we'd gone through insurance, it would have been in, several thousands of dollars for this little fracture. And that's part of what I think is the problem with it, is the insurance companies drive stuff up, and then the government gets involved, and they're having their concerns. And so now there we are. And then when it comes down to actually trying to correct the problems with the system, and I'm talking about here in the United States, and I guess it can apply elsewhere as well. The problem with trying to find a system that one, because you want innovation, you want research, you want people to make a profit, you want doctors to get paid well. The reason that the United States has a lot of doctors is because people come from elsewhere to come here so they can make money, so they can take advantage of the situation here, and they make money. I mean, that's why we have so many great doctors in the United States, why we have so many doctors in the United States, versus other places. Other places, doctors are getting, you can't get to see a doctor. In Canada, it's hard to get to see an actual doctor because there's so few of them, because it doesn't pay that well. Why would you? I mean, why would you stay there when you could go to the United States, work half as much, and make 3 times as much money? That's the system. Then, of course, you also have the fact that big pharma is involved in the whole process, and so they're funding it because they're making a lot of money. So you have all these different interests that are making a lot of money off you being sick, and so now we develop a system that doesn't heal people. Instead, we have a system that just makes you comfortable in your misery. So we stop trying to cure your disease, and now we just treat the symptoms to your disease, because there's more money in that than there is in curing you. So that's the horrible system that we've created. And how do we stop that? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what the answer is. But part of the problem of getting to the solution is that we aren't talking about what the actual problems are. We only talk about evil companies making money and making profits. We should have the government should just be the one payer system that'll fix everything. No, it will just make it worse. Because whether you know it or not, the government is involved in your healthcare already. But they're involved but not as an advocate for you. They're an advocate for big business and big pharma, and so it's it's a tough thing to figure out. It really is. It's a difficult one, but I think if you approach it at it from a purely political thing, where you think, "Oh, socialized medicine is the answer," there are huge problems and red flags from that. But then you say, "Well, how we go completely free market," which I think would help better. I think you get government less involved, and you let. I think we're getting more, alternative thing. This is one thing that I think that they disapprove of TikTok, and they disapprove of social media, is that now, and I see it more and more, is more people are getting into homeopathic remedies. They're getting back to, if all the pharmaceuticals are based off old world medicine. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but all these pharmaceuticals, it's man-made, science is involved. It's all they're doing is they're isolating the one thing that actually is the therapeutic aspect of whatever element it is. Walnuts. I believe aspirin came from walnuts. If you have a headache, the old world thing was you eat walnuts. And so the pharmaceutical companies were like, "Hey, well, let's figure out what it is in a walnut that actually fixes it." And so this is how we discovered aspirin. And so now we just take aspirin. So now we take the concentrated form of what walnuts was doing, and we have aspirin. And so this is, and if I'm wrong about, I could be wrong about what tree it was in nuts, but anyway, you understand where I'm coming. So they would take the thing from nature and they would isolate it, and that's how we get pharmaceuticals. That's where it comes from. That's how it started. And so, because pharmacies got involved and money became involved, they didn't want people to just go to some, shaman or homeopathic person. Instead of really perfecting that system, they went full into the other way. And so the Rockefellers were involved, and they basically took over our medical system, and that's why we're here. White willow bark. That's it. Thank you, Gwen. White willow bark. Thank you. But if we go back to more homeopathic, I think more people are doing that. I think more people are just taking better care of themselves. They're realizing that our food has become poison with all the pesticides and all this nonsense that we keep putting in it. And not necessarily, I mean, some people want to say that it's because of these nefarious shenanigans going on. I think it's just good business in their mind. And even though these things can end up hurting people in the short run, it's still they can get a bigger yield off their crops by spraying it with garbage. And like I said, it's an unfortunate problem with the system. But I think more and more people are getting back to more nature. They're getting away from the pesticides. Look, I don't use a lot of soaps. I'm very careful not. I've learned that your body is all right. You're just a series of tubes. When it really comes down to it, we are a series of tubes, and we are absorbing things all the time. Your body's constantly absorbing everything. So everything you put in your hair, everything you put on your face, all these things that you keep, you're putting chemicals on your body all the time, and a lot of these are not all that great for you. And so I've been working to I've been looking to not. So people ask, "What's my hair care product?" I shampoo my hair like once every 2 weeks. Most of the time, I don't use shampoo. Just water, and then I use a very homeopathic soaps. I don't use. I never use body soaps. I use just very natural stuff. I don't use anything on my. Never put soap on your face. And fluoride. Never use fluoride. You're right. Somebody just mentioned fluoride. That was funny. When I was in high school, I was in debate, and back then, and the way debate works in school is that you are taught to defend both sides of an issue. So you would take something, you would take a subject, and you would have to prepare a case for it, and then you would also have to prepare a case against it. You didn't know when you went into your round which side of the issue you were on, because it wasn't about being on one side. Right? It was about how to argue, and you better understood an issue when you really got into it on both sides, when you were for and against. And well, it just happened the first year I got into debate, the topic for that year was fluoride and the use of fluoride in our system. And fluoride is a byproduct, is it of something else, and it's a horrible substance. I mean, it has some benefit to your teeth, but overall, it's a horrible, horrible substance. It's terrible for you. And they knew it was horrible but from the beginning. But they had so much of it, they had to figure out something to do with it. And so by getting it to become consumable, and using it in products that people consume, it was the easiest way to get rid of it. And so that's how we have fluoride, and they put it into the water. Like I said, it does have some benefits to some degree, but the overall effect of fluoride is horrifying and terrible. And ever since I was in school, I stopped. I wouldn't use fluoride for anything. So I got into I brush my teeth with xylitol. That, or you don't really even need toothpaste, to be honest with you. If you just brush your teeth with a regular brush and just rinse. I do rinses with olive oil and coconut oil, and I also mouthwash with hydrogen peroxide. So that's what you just start learning. And a lot of this stuff is stuff that I've been learning from TikTok. There's some great people out there doing amazing things on TikTok, on Instagram, videos where they're sharing all these old world things. There's some that are Native Americans who are sharing Native American remedies for things, and they're amazing. This stuff is out there. I mean, if you're going to appropriate anything from a culture, that's the stuff to appropriate, because it is fantastic. So Um, no, no, no. No, look, like I said, I bring up fluoride because it does have some benefits. Don't get me wrong. There are. I mean, look, I've debated both sides of this thing, but there are studies that have shown the long term effects of fluoride. Um, as it builds up in your system, that's when it causes problems. I mean, just having a casual usage, I don't know that you would really get exposed to enough of it to have you're not going to have immediate effects. So this is where it becomes sort of a problem, is because it does have benefits. There are things that and I'm not here to have a conspiracy about fluoride. I'm not saying we should completely eliminate fluoride, because it does have some benefits to a certain degree, but there are better alternatives to fluoride. There really are. I mean, there are, and so, and look, if you're going to dismiss me because I dislike fluoride, uh, you're a sad individual, and that's fine. That's fine. Go away. If you're not willing to listen to somebody and talk, explore things yourself, and look, I constantly am challenging my belief system, and if you have something that will give me greater light and knowledge, I am all for it. Share it with me. Don't just shut down and go, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, blah 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 blah. You're part of the problem. You really are. um, all I'm saying is there are better options to what we've been doing. There's better ways to take care of yourself. Why not try it? Why not try them? Cheaper, better alternatives to what you've been doing. That's all I'm saying. So, yes, coconut oil is good for your hair too. Yes, coconut oil, apple cider vinegar. I've gotten into using that quite a bit. It's terrible. It's nasty. But man, it's got some great medicinal. Castor oil. It's funny, all of these things, witch hazel, all these things I remember when I was a kid, my grandparents are using. I used to, I used to kind of make fun of how my grandparents thought all this stuff was amazing. And now as I've gotten older, I realize it's because it was amazing. When you realize that eating um, bacon and eggs with whole butter uh, and was really good for you, and still is good for you. But we were sold a bill of goods about low fat diet and margarine, and then we ended up pumping crap into our bodies that isn't any good for us. And look, you can sit there and call me a conspiracy theorist. I'm just telling you what makes my life better. If you want to eat low fat foods and eat margarine and gargle with fluoride, go ahead. I don't care. If you're happy, I don't care. That's your problem, not mine. John Kennedy, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes last April. I have a good friend that works in alternative medicine. With her help, I'm on the road to reversing the diabetes. I refused the meds and said I'd deal with it myself. I changed my whole diet, etc., and my doctor was shocked. Yes, that's me too. I am type 2 diabetic, and that's a big part of my health was changing, because I was trying to do all the things they told me to do, and that's doing what they were telling me to do. The American health system, because that's what caused my problem. And so when I stopped listening to them, because when you get diagnosed as a diabetic, they don't tell you how to stop being diabetic. They teach you how to maintain your diabetes. They teach you how to continue to be diabetic in comfort. They don't teach you how to reverse it. They don't teach you that your body becomes resistant to insulin. And so there's things you can do. There's a number of reasons why it's doing that. And there are things that you can do to reverse that and to minimize it. And that's what John um, was talking about. And that's what I did. I remember my first checkup after I'd been diagnosed. It was 6 months later. I went in. My A1C was normal. My blood sugars were normal. My blood pressure was down. And he's like, "What did you do?" Because I did what I took the medications that the doctor said to take. And I read all the stuff from and again, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. This is only this is what I did. And I'm not here to diagnose your disease or anything. Just let me get that disclaimer out there. Actually feels pretty good to get to say that. Get to be one of those people. So, but all the research, all their literature just tells you how much sugar you can eat and it doesn't hurt you as bad. But you're still hurting yourself, but you're just not hurting yourself. So now it's like, hey, you're going to die. This is a degenerative disease. You're going to die from this, but let's slow it down so you don't die so fast. That's really the best. That's the medical message. That's the message that they teach you. That's what they share with you, is that you're going to have all these problems and you're going to die fast, but we can slow it down. Well, there are alternatives to that, and there's things that you could do to make yourself a lot healthier, to eat better. So what I did was when I went back in, he says, "What did you do?" And I says, "Well, I just decided that, just like with any allergy, if you tell somebody you're allergic to shellfish, a smart thing to do is stop eating shellfish." Yeah. Is that what? You're allergic to shellfish? So you stopped eating shellfish? Wow. That's amazing. Why would you do such a thing? That's crazy. Well, that's what you do, because if I eat it, it will kill me. So I treated sugar as an allergy. I just thought, I'm just going to pretend in my mind I'm allergic to sugar. I can't eat sugar because sugar has a negative effect on my body. And so I just stopped eating sugar. And I looked for better options for myself. And I found myself eating better and exposing myself to new foods that I'd never tried before and thinking about things differently. And my health has improved dramatically. So again, it's not about, you don't focus on the negative. So I wasn't focused on, I don't eat sugar. I don't eat sugar. I don't eat sugar. Instead of thinking that way, instead I was like looking at all this other stuff I get to eat, looking for better options and looking for things I hadn't tried before, looking for different flavor combinations and different foods and that were healthier for me and better options. And as a result, I'm healthier and I'm stronger and I take better care of myself because of it. Instead of just accepting the condition, I decided I was going to fight through it and get to overcome it. And so that's what I've done. And so I just avoid it. And that's the thing, is you don't focus on the negative, focus on the positive. So instead of looking as, oh no, I can't do all these things I used to. No, now it's like, hey, I want to go and do these other things, these better things, these new things. And when you change that in your mind, and this is good for anything you do, if you want to overcome anything negative in your life, instead of focusing on not doing it, just stop thinking about it and start just doing it. It's like, I like a great analogy. If you want to quit playing the tuba, let's say you've been playing the tuba your whole life, and you just decide you don't want to play the tuba anymore. You just put you get rid of the tuba and you stop playing the tuba. Well, what are you going to do? Well, maybe you pick up another instrument and play something else. But you just do something other than play the tuba. That's how you stop playing the tuba. And people are like, "Oh, it's not that easy." Well, no, it is. It is that easy. The solutions are simple, and it's not always the easiest thing to do, but it really is that simple. You just don't do it. It's like I don't drink alcohol. I never have. I've never been interested in alcohol ever. I've never had an interest in trying it because I saw what it did to my grandfather, and I, as a child, developed a hatred for alcohol. I hated the smell of it. I hated its presence. I wanted nothing to do with it ever. I don't think it as being social. I don't think I just never liked it because I saw what it did to my grandfather. This man whom I loved, but when he drank, he would, for a while, he would be a little tipsy and a little funny and interesting, but ultimately it would turn him into a monster, and he became something you didn't want him to be. And we would have to leave. And so I always saw alcohol as something that had a lot of negative effects, that it turned you into something that you weren't. I saw alcohol as the thing that took away my grandfather, and it did. He died early, young. He was 63 when he died because of alcohol. He basically just destroyed his liver. He died relatively young. I mean, 63. I'm 53. I'm just 10 years away from that. So I'm not. So people, when I tell people I don't drink, I have people go, "Oh, you don't know what you're missing." I said, "Well, yeah, because I don't really care. Yeah, I've never had it, so yeah, I can't miss something I never had." So, Jeff Schwab, I eat more fruits now inside pies, but still fruits. Well, it's a thing. It's a thing. Linda Mae Ellis, today is my anniversary, 10 years without alcohol. Yes, Linda Mae. Awesome. Yeah, if you don't want to do so, well, that was the other thing, was I started looking at food instead of things like I want things that candy or cakes. What you have to do is you have to think of that stuff as garbage. And that's I think I put on my and I fall back from time to time. I've gone back to eating sugar for a while, and it's like, I can deal with this, and you can't. So I understand addiction because I've had a sugar addiction. I enjoy sugar, enjoy mellow yellow, but you can get, and I'm trying not to drink diet sodas either. I try to limit, and I say that with my Coke Zero. Look, I understand. I'm not perfect. But when you're not drinking sugar, is sort of there's trade-offs. But yeah, you have to think of it as his Gauge photo editing. It has to be an enemy. Yeah, it's true. You have to just say, hey, I cannot. Those things hurt me, and they do. Sugar does hurt me, and so when I'm not eating sugar, I feel better. I sleep better. My vision's better. My the thing that cued me off to being diabetic was neuropathy, because all of a sudden I was getting these weird sensations in my feet. Just where it was sort of this. What happens is your nerves get damaged, and so you stop getting proper signals from your extremities. And my feet were like, sometimes it felt like they're on fire, and then other times they're like completely numb, and I don't feel anything. Yet at the same time, it's very painful. So it's really an odd. Unless you experience it, you don't know what I'm talking about. Well, you have that time where you like sleep on your handwriting, you wake up and your hands are all numb. It's like that, but with shooting pain along with it. So it's not, so it's numb and it's got pain. So you don't, it's not a fun thing. So I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I went and saw my doctor about that issue. And that's when I found out that I was diabetic. And so it's been a process trying to get rid of the neuropathy. And, yeah, not fun. It is not a good experience. And I don't wish it on anyone. But like I said, it's forced me to take better care of myself. Um, yes, artificial sweeteners are bad. That I agree with. They are not. Well, the one that I do like is xylitol because it's not really an artificial sweetener. It's an alternative sweetener, as I like to call it. Monk fruit, coconut sugar. I'll use that from time to time. But you still have to. The biggest thing is just not being addicted to the sweetness and not having to always go back to that. So that's where we're at with that whole thing. So how long? Oh, gee, a longer. So anyway, with all that aside, so this week got some fun things coming up. I won't say where, but I've been contacted about doing a motivational speech for an organization. That's all I'm going to say about it. And we're working out the details. And I'm getting into doing that stuff, and doing more public speaking, not just stand up. I love doing stand up. I love performing, but I'm also getting into doing motivational speaking because I think I have a message that's different than most because I'm not going into motivational speaking um, to get you to be rich. I'm not, I don't know how to be rich. I guess I could um, be rich if I focus on, but I'm not really interested in having a lot of stuff. And um, I'm not, I'm not, uh, I'm not motivated by money. And I think improving your life, I think having money helps. And I think that's a good part of it. And, but if that's your focus, and this is where I think a lot of self help and uh, gurus and stuff who are into that motivational, that it's always focused on the money. It's always focused on the stuff. It's always focused on um, having more and more and more stuff and going out and getting more and more stuff. And that's not really the answer to any of this. And so that's why I'd say that I'm a demotivational speaker because I'm not really here to tell you um, that you're lacking and you need something. I'm here to show you already have everything that you need, that you already are amazing, and that you just need to be more of who you are. You don't have to become something that you're not. You need to become more of who you are. And I'm not saying you shouldn't expand your knowledge and expand your skills and become, work on yourself and be a better person. That's part of it. But it really is the focus is different. So anyway, I'm getting into motivational speaking, and people are starting to reach out to me. I'm working on a book, and I just really want to get this message out because I think it's different than what most people. I watch a lot of these motivational stuff that I see, and it's all pretty much the same. It's all working out really hard and getting big and buff muscles and um, having all this money and traveling the world and having big boats and fancy cars and blah blah blah. It's all that's boring to me because I've done all the travel, and it can wow. Just having a really big nice body is great, is healthy, and that's fantastic, but it also attracts a lot of things that you don't want. Having a lot of money attracts people into your life that you don't want in your life. It attracts things that you don't want to come into your life. They don't talk about that. They don't mention that part of it. They don't mention that these pursuits that you think are going to bring you happiness, that once you get there, they don't give you happiness. And that's where a lot of these people will work so hard and they make all this money and they get the perfect body and then they get it. And then when they get it, they're still empty and unfulfilled. And I hate to use those words, and I'll talk about that, but they're worried about, they get all that, and then they get even more depressed. That's why it's always weird when you find out somebody who's rich and famous and they kill themselves. It's like, what? How, what? When they take themselves out, it's like, what is going, what? You've got to be, what? And people are baffled. Well, it's like, I get it. It's because they thought that getting all that was going to solve all the problems, but it doesn't. It creates a whole other series of problems, many of which you may not be ready to deal with. So approaching life with more humility, with more peace, is like I tell people, happiness is not a destination. Happiness is a companion along the way. Happiness is something you have with you. And that's why you can still have difficulties and you still feel sadness. You can still have those moments, but happiness can still be there with you. You can feel, just as you can have two, cognitive dissonance, you can still have two opposing thoughts. Which I have my ideas about cognitive dissonance. I mean, a lot of people will use it as a negative thing, but it's actually, cognitive dissonance is a blessing. As I say, if you've ever seen that analogy, you have the elephant, and then you have 10 blind people who are touching different parts of the elephant, and they're talking to each other about what they're experiencing. And someone says, well, obviously what we're experiencing is a tree. He's there holding the trunk. He says, oh, it's a tree. And another one says, oh, there's no way this is a tree. This thing is smooth, because he's touching the tusks. Another one says, you guys are nuts. This is like a rope. He's back there holding the tail. And so they're all arguing about what they're experiencing, because they're experiencing the exact same animal, but they're all experiencing a different part of the animal. So they're arguing about who's right about all this. Well, through cognitive dissonance, you're able to, if you were one of these blind people, blind men touching the elephant, and you moved around and you start off the tail and go, okay, yeah, it's a rope. And then you move around and you go, hey, wait a second, this feels different. It feels bumpy. It feels like it's rocks. And it feels like it's a tree. And then as you move around, you have all these conflicting ideas in your head. You have, it's a rope, it's a wall, it's a tree, you have all these different ideas, but you don't have the full picture. But you have in your mind two or many conflicting ideas about it. But as you move around, you start to put it all together. And at some point in time, you gain all the information, and then you realize, oh, it's this big animal who has these different attributes. Then you have an understanding of the whole picture. But until you get the whole picture, until you have the experience of experiencing the entire animal in its entirety and understanding it, up until that point in time, you need to be able to hold two different opposing ideas in your head until you get to that point. So we do this all the time, where you have part of the story and other parts that are different. And so you're thinking that, well, it could be this or that. But until you have all the information, your brain has to be able to deal with it. And so by being able to have cognitive dissonance where you entertain two different ideas at the same time, it's because there's more to it, and you understand that. And so you're able to continue on understanding that, hey, I'm not sure which way or how this is going, but here's what I know. Hold that. And then, but if you become so fixated that you're right with only some of the information, that's when you create problems for yourself. Right. Well, emotionally, we can feel that same way. I mean, when somebody passes away, you can feel sadness and heartache because they're passed on. But at the same time, you can still experience joy and happiness when you think of them because you did have so many great experiences with them. You still have happiness because of them in your life. They were a part of your life, and now they still are a part of your life. Just now it's a different relationship. Now it's a different thing. Now the relationship changes, but you can still hold that feeling of both grief and happiness. And it's okay to do that. It's okay. You know, we feel like we have to be grieving. We can't feel happiness. We have to hold on to the grief or we else somehow we didn't really love them, which is nonsense. That's not how it works. You could grieve them, but at the same time have joy for having known them and still have joy in your heart because of them. In fact, the better way to honor them instead of just feeling horrible all the time is to go out and live a life and be happy in honor of them. You know, bring them along in your joy. So. Which part is God? I think, yeah. In answer to your God, it's like we don't fully have all the answers. It's why it's interesting. Is it Dawkins? I think he wrote in one of his books. He talks about the levels of belief. So you have, and there's 7 levels of belief. I don't know if you've seen this. So he has up here. He has the believer in God. Okay, so you have somebody who is 100%. There's absolutely a God, no doubt about it. I'm all in. There is a God. You can't convince me otherwise. There's a God. And then the step below that is, I'm pretty sure there's a God. I don't know for sure, but you know, I'm in on the God thing, but I could be wrong. But I don't know, right? That's where it's sort of, you know, it's like a full believer with it with some agnosty, if you will. Okay, so you have true believer, fairly good believer, right? And then you have the I'm kind of sure there's a God, but I don't know. Whatever, you know, it could. I'm kind of a believer in God, but not really, right? And then you have the full agnostic, which means I have no idea if there's a God or there's no God. And if there is a God, you know, he didn't make it easy for me to figure this out. Maybe the problem is him. Maybe God's got God's just not good at being God. So that's why I don't. But so you're just agnostic. So I could go either way. I don't know if there's God or not a God, right? Yeah. Then below that is the agnostic, and then there's the agnostic that leans towards atheism. It's like, I don't know if there is a God. I don't know if there isn't a God, but I kind of think there isn't a God. Maybe there isn't a God, but I don't know. And then you have the full-on atheist, which is there is no God. There absolutely is no God. There's no evidence in any way, shape, or form that there's a God. And I know for surety that there isn't a God. So that's where you're at with belief, right? And you'll notice that the full-on atheist and the full-on believer in God are basically the same person. You're basically, that's why a lot of people who will leave religion, that they'll go full atheist, because they're still faith-based, but now their faith is in something else. Instead of their faith 100% God, now their faith is 100% in their own thoughts. You know what I mean? So they just trade God for, instead of worshiping God, now they're just worshiping their own intellect. And they think that they're so smart that they have figured everything out. They're smarter than everybody else. You're all a bunch of idiots that are following fairy tales, and you're all a bunch of morons, stupid idiots. And I'm smarter than you. There's that. And then there's the others, which are, hey, I'm full of God, and if you don't believe the way I believe, you're going to hell, and you're all a bunch of stupid, foolish idiots because I'm smarter and better than you. So there's that. So they're basically the same thing. So you know what I mean? To some degree. Or like, okay. That's what he was saying on that scale. So you have to ask yourself, well, where most of us are kind of in the most of us believe in God of some sort, but our level of commitment is not necessarily. It's sort of like we're sort of believer. We sort of believe in God, but keep my options open. I think that's where a lot of people are. It's like, I believe in God, but I'm keeping my options open. So, but again, a lot of this is because we don't have all the information. And so we're holding on. Well, here I have this, I've had this experience that can only be explained by God. There being the existence of God. And then there's, but there's this, that, this, and that, and the other. And one thing I would caution people who put their faith in science is that science is a process. Science isn't a thing in the regards that we look at it. You know, people think that you have science on one side, God on the other. No, if you're a true believer in God, God and science are the same thing. Most all of our scientific discoveries came through people trying to prove the existence of God. You know, Big Bang Theory, I don't know if you're aware of this, Big Bang Theory was devised as a theory to explain how, because up to that point in time, we believed that all of existence was always there, that there was never a beginning. Because if there is a beginning, then there's a God who created the beginning. And so that was the idea behind the Big Bang Theory, was to go and find that moment that God created everything. It would happen in one instant. And so they said, here, this is what we believe. And so you go all the way down to and by proving that there was a first movement that had to be created by a first mover, God, right? That's where the Big Bang Theory came, is that it all came down here. Boop. God said, hey, let's go ahead and create everything. And then you have the Big Bang. That was the idea. But then when scientists, they started exploring it, and they're saying, hey, this makes a lot of sense, blah, blah, blah. We can prove this theory. Here's this. And that's when science was like, okay, well, we'll go all the way back to that point. But that whole thing that God started it, let's just drop that part. Let's just ignore that part. And then we just have the Big Bang. So instead of having created a theory that would explain the creation at one point, thus giving credibility to the idea of creation by God, they get to that point, and then they're saying, okay, yeah, we agree with it, but I still don't want this to prove God exists, so let's just pretend God didn't do it. So there's got to be something other than God being the explanation for the Big Bang to occur. And
And that's where we got the Big Bang Theory. Was people were trying to prove that that everything could be created at one point in time, because really, when you talk about it, that's how it comes down to it. So, but again, coming back to that idea of holding two different ideas at the same time, that's why cognitive dissonance is a blessing. Is, people talk about, oh, it's terrible. No, it's not. Cognitive dissonance, it just means that you have a brain and you're using it. Yeah, this is where you get into the whole simulation theory, is that we're all, what we've been able to work down to is that we're all energy, and that we're all just manifestations of energy. And when you go into the digital world, all of that is just energy manifesting in a physical way. And so it's not hard to make the jump that, hey, if that's what we're creating there, then really that's just a magnification of what we are ourselves. And so I always ask, well, okay, if we're a simulation, what are we a simulation of? Because the simulations we create in a computer are simulations of this world that we live in, or a simulation of a world that we've created and established there based on our thoughts, based off our experience, and we've created that. So now here we go. If we're in a simulation, who created the simulation and what's the purpose of the simulation? That's something to think about. If we are a simulation, what are we a simulation of, and who created the simulation, and what is the purpose of the simulation? And if the simulation creates an effect in us, then who and what are we? Huh. That's a thought. If we're in a simulation and we are affected by the things that occur within the simulation, what is it? It's like you have a player in a video game. You sit down, you're player one, and you're playing the game, and you're learning as you're playing the game. Is the game itself learning, or are you learning the game? Huh. So you're playing the game, you're learning the game, you're learning the ins and outs of the games, you're finding the cheat codes, you're developing the skills to play the game, but you're the one controlling the game, but you're in the game, you're influencing the game, but it's only because of your experience in the game, you being outside of the game, you yourself, your knowledge, your experience being inputting into the game is creating the play of the game, and you're influencing the outcome of the game. But the question, once again, to what effect, to what end, and why? To what effect and why? And that, if we're in a simulation, it doesn't matter, because the simulation is our reality. Because as we change and we progress within this reality, then the simulation is our reality, regardless if it is a simulation or not. But just like a game, you have to ask yourself, well, what is the purpose of the game? Is it, I mean, is it to obtain a bunch of stuff? Is that what it is? Just get a bunch of stuff. But at some point in time, you get all the stuff. Well, you're really the winner. So how do you win the game? If we're in a game, we're in a simulation, and we're playing a game, well, how do you win the game? Is there a winning to the game? That's the question. That's the question I leave with you. I'm going to explore this a little bit more. So, yay. All right. So each day, here's how I'm going to do this for the rest of the week. I'll have my, do my little presentation of the day, and then I will break off and to one group, and we'll continue the conversation elsewhere. So I can take you. It's just hard because I'm on live on several different platforms all at the same time, and so it's difficult necessarily to watch all of them because trying to read all of them. So I got Instagram, I've got TikTok, I've got Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. I'm even on Twitch. Amazingly enough, I think of all the time that I've been doing this, I've had one person on Twitch follow me. I'm on LinkedIn. I didn't even know you could go live on LinkedIn. Somehow I managed to. I'm live on LinkedIn and Twitter. So we've got all that going on. But anyway, let's see what's going on here. So I'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk more about game theory. We'll talk more about the simulation. We'll get more into that. We'll bring out more reasons for you to dislike me or like me even better tomorrow. This is always the challenge of putting yourself out there, is no matter what you say or do, you're always going to have a bunch of people that get freaked out by what you're doing. So, and it's fun. It's actually kind of fun. So let's talk about it. We'll be talking about more about it tomorrow. Come and join me again tomorrow. We'll be talking about are we in a simulation? And if so, what does that mean? That and many other philosophical questions tomorrow. Have a super freaking awesome day, everybody.